Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for Wednesday, January 10th, 2018, starting at 5:35 p.m. Rachel, could you please call roll?
Yes. Joe Greer.
Present.
Jessica West.
Present.
Keith Bevan.
Present.
Michelle Jensen.
Present.
Ayla McNay.
Present.
John Nesmith.
Present.
Mike Pepin.
Present.
Craig Steele is absent. Hannah Sturdivant is absent.
Okay, as far as the agenda, do we have any discussion on tonight's agenda? If there is no discussion, may I entertain a motion to approve the agenda for January 10th?
McNay seconds. Can I have a motion, please? Oh, I motion, sorry, excuse me. I motion to approve the attendance.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We also have the December 13th, 2017 regular meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion from that? If there is no discussion, may I entertain a motion to approve the December 13th, 2017 regular meeting minutes?
Madam President, I
Yes.
make a motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, for announcements, we have Shelley Houston with upcoming events.
Good evening, Commissioners. How are you?
Good.
I've gone ahead and outlined a couple events that I think I'd like to call to your attention. Although they aren't specifically parks and recreation events, I think they're important for our understanding of the city, and we can view them as a good networking or marketing opportunity. So you each have the handout called Upcoming Events. So this month, we just found out that there's going to be a Meridian Town Hall meeting over at the Coal Valley Christian High School on Wednesday, January 24th. And this should be well attended because it's got a couple of fairly hot topics. The primary topic will be the recent changes in how plastics in our community are recycled. So that'll be popular. There's a lot of questions and opinions and ideas and thoughts regarding that. So I assume our friends from Republic Services will be in attendance. There's going to be some demonstrations and whatnot. So that's one topic. And then towards the end of the meeting, I understand there will be a little discussion from the West Ada School District regarding their upcoming school bond levy type information. So it should be popular, and you're all welcome to attend. They start at 6:30 and last until approximately 8. February kicks off with the Mayor's State of the City address and Taste of Meridian reception. You all are welcome to attend the reception as our guest. It's free for anyone in the community to hear the mayor's speech, but if you want to attend the dinner reception afterwards, it requires a $10 ticket. And that $10 ticket is what we're comping you to thank you for being on our commission. If you have spouse or children or others that wish to attend, they'll need to purchase a ticket through the mayor's office. It's going to start, rather than at 4 o'clock in the past, it's kind of shifting back a half hour later to give the students time to get out of the way and the buses to get out of Dodge. So it's going to start at 4:29 p.m. So that's the State of the City address and Taste of Meridian reception. Also, at the end of the month, there's going to be the Youth Council's Ignite Youth Speaking and Idea Competition. This is a fun event where these students are invited to present an idea or any topic of their choosing, but the catch is they only have 5 minutes and they have to use 20 PowerPoint slides set on auto advance. They advance like every 15 seconds. So some are funny, some are serious, some are this, some are that. We just never know what we're going to get. So that's fun. We don't advertise this widely to the public, but if any of you think it's something you or your families would enjoy listening to, it'd be great to have you there. It'll be on, again, February 26th. It's the Monday night from 7 to 8:30 over at the Research Church, which it kind of shares a portion of the home court, the Meridian home court over there on Taylor Avenue. Again, it's free to attend. You're all welcome. Coffee with the Mayor is going to be on Tuesday, March 6th from 8 to 9:30 in the morning at Moxie Java House of Brews. This is the Moxie Java at Locust Grove and Fairview that's getting a bit of a remodel and a facelift, and they're adding some tap handles and wine service in addition to their coffee and pastries. And it happens to be owned by a former city employee named J.C. Holman. So we can go and see J.C.'s entrepreneurial undertaking there on March 6th. Parks and Rec will also have some information and display, and we'll be present to greet the public as well. We get into April with Do the Right Day on Thursday, April 5th. This is the third or fourth or maybe even fifth time we've done this. It's a day when our community is supposed to kind of embrace kindness and compassion, and everyone's encouraged to do something kind for a person on their right, whether it's a neighbor, a coworker, the lady in line at the grocery store, however you want to interpret that. So we'll be doing that on April 5th. And then on April 13th, our next activity guide, which will be our big summer guide, will come out. It comes out in the Meridian Press and also heads out to Meridian mailboxes to many residents. Copies will also be available here at City Hall. Steve, and I'm not sure if he's going to talk to you now about, you can see at the bottom I've said dates for the following springtime events will be announced soon. We're working hard to coordinate all the pieces and parts. It's like putting a puzzle together for several events. Do you want to touch on those now?
Sure. These dates are still in flux, but to get them just on your radar, we will confirm them at your February meeting. There are none happening between now and then, but just to get them on your radar, we do expect to be cutting a ribbon on the Journey of Heroes art out in Heroes Park. The art was just recently installed, if you get a chance to drive by, but there's still some landscape restoration and things that are needed before we officially cut a ribbon. We're looking at mid-March, potentially Thursday, March 15th at 4 p.m. But again, we got to confirm these dates with you. That would be the day after our March commission meeting. Then 5 Mile Creek Pathway, the segment H2 that we've all been, this has been a big priority for the commission over the last couple of years. That project is wrapping up. And we think we can coincide a ribbon cutting with our April Pathways Tour. But in looking at our calendars, we discovered that the April 11th date that would normally be that commission meeting, Colin, myself, and many of the department are out of town for the Idaho Recreation and Parks Association conference. One option is to continue to hold it on that date without us, and I'm sure Mike and Rachel will be great tour guides. But for discussion, I wanted to propose, if we can get it on your calendars early enough and make it work, that we just bump it up a week to April 4th. And maybe hold the ribbon cutting at 4 p.m. So that it's after school. And but I don't know how it works for work schedules. But the idea would be that instead that we would be able to cut the ribbon. We'd have our bikes, be in our bike gear, whatever, and then we could immediately after the ribbon cutting ceremony, we could take off from there and do our Pathways Tour. So let me pause there, since that is a specific question, and just ask if there's any known conflicts right now with April 4th, or if you just want to take that home, look at calendars, and get back to us.
Madam President?
Yes.
Two things. One, I think I have no problem with April 4th. And then also a little bit off topic, but you mentioned this about park ribbon cuttings being after school times. The past couple I haven't been able to attend because they're during school. And I think it'd be really great if we are able to initiate that for all park openings in the future.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does anyone have a conflict with that day?
April 4th doesn't.
Personally, I would like you guys to be there, so.
The other reason to move it a week early instead of a week late is the mayor's tentatively available for the week before, but not the week after. So we have looked at her calendar, and if that works, we might be able to get it to work for us and you and the mayor's office. So if you wouldn't mind, we don't have to say it's, definite and solidified tonight, but if we could put that out there to you, have you guys, look and then just let us know, we can confirm that between now and our next meeting.
Madam President, I have a question.
Yes.
Just to refresh my memory, which segment is H2? Is it the one from Fairview?
The one from Fairview. Yep, the one that connects Fairview heading, I guess, south, to the existing segment that connects to Pine. So we now have a continuous...
You don't have to go through that apartment complex.
Correct. Now we can connect through. So your Kayla's statement about the after school ties in well with the next one, and that is we've had a lot of involvement with the commission as well as MIAC for the new Memorial Plaza in Kleiner Park. We've still got to finalize the fees and things that the commission discussed, was it last month or the month before, and take those to council. But we would expect to be able to have fees ready, bricks installed, we talked about the tree last month, and get those all ready for a possible ribbon cutting on Wednesday, May 2nd. And again, we're talking about 4 p.m. Because we want the kids that are high school, MIAC kids, to be able to come after school. So that is the next proposal. And then Hillsdale Park, we're planning this is the biggest one, quite frankly. And this one is a large partnership. It's with the YMCA. We still have to confirm the date for sure, but the date that they're talking about, if their certificate of occupancies hold true and things like that, where they are right now, we're looking at Friday, May 25th. That is the Friday going into Memorial Day weekend. And we know some people may be leaving out of town later that day, but the ribbon cutting was going to probably be earlier, like late morning, around the lunch hour. And then that'll be the joint ribbon cutting ceremony. And then we're going to throw a big party to celebrate the park with an event that evening. So we're going to try and actually make that one into an event. Marty Hill, who's the donor of the land, is also agreeing to fund a band and things like that for an event. He really wants to have a special event for that weekend. So those are the dates to get tentatively on your calendar. Like I say, these will be confirmed, and we will go over them again next month at your February meeting. And I guess I'll stand for any questions or turn it back to you.
Valentine's Day?
That's next on the agenda.
Oh, got it. Never mind. Okay. Does anyone have any questions regarding the events that we talked about?
I missed the day for Kleiner. Did you have a tentative date for Kleiner Park?
Wednesday, May 2nd, 4 p.m.
Okay.
If y'all have any questions or concerns or comments about any of these events, you can always call me and ask. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Shally.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next announcement is Stu, sit away.
So it kind of continues the theme, but February 14th is the next date for the February commission meeting next month, which happens to be Valentine's Day. And so we thought we'd at least ask the question, do you want to hold the commission meeting on Valentine's Day? Some spouses or significant others may want you there. So we thought we'd just ask the question. We'll do whatever you guys prefer. So the question is, do you want to hold it on the 14th or do you want to bump it?
Madam President,
Yes.
Trey, I'm sure he doesn't have anything to do, but but yeah, no, I'm good with whatever on that one.
Madam President,
Yes.
I, for one, have some plans for my little brother, who's my Valentine this year. So I would really appreciate if we were able to push it like a week or a week before. That would be really nice.
If
we
we
need
did it
to-
on the 7th, we could do it on Craig's birthday.
No, mine's March, so.
Oh, that, I do have March on there. I'm sorry, so, wrong month. Doggone it. Let's move March too, so.
And
My calendar flipped, so.
the 7th is the address. Can we do it a day later?
Yeah, you could bump it a day or a week, whatever works. We would have to, there might be a planning and zoning commission meeting in here.
Thursday.
Let's see. Treg's a former P&Z commissioner. Are they first and third or second and
We
fourth?
could do the 21st.
First and third.
So the 15th would be a P&Z night because it's the third Thursday.
But I would think that this commission's way more important, wouldn't you think?
Of course, we think that. Nice try. We could
No,
also bump it to the next week. It's not a huge.
We could, move to, we've met, oh, no. Oh, we have to stream now. We're streaming right now.
Oh.
Hello, everybody. So in order to stream, we can't move to conference rooms A or B. We would need to move to a night that we could be in here. So
How about the 21st? Is that week?
A week later.
Yeah.
maybe we look at a week later on the 21st.
The 21st work? Would that work for everyone? Sounds to me like the 21st is a go.
So that'll put I guess the April one's 2 months away. I was thinking we moved the April one forward and this one's going back, but
We're gonna be close.
there's a month in between, so we're good. So 21st of February, March 14th, and April the 4th would end up being the dates. We'll confirm those and confirm room availabilities and things like that. We'll say those are tentative right now, and we will have Rachel do some research into the rooms and get back to you to confirm those dates.
Emily, if we had some items at the last meeting that maybe need to be mentioned, is that something that we can do, or does that need to be on the agenda? Just about the live streaming and the committee meetings.
Thank you.
Madam President, it does need to be on the agenda. There's a mechanism to amend the agenda on the fly. It requires a motion, a statement of why these matters weren't noticed, and then a clear statement of what will be added. Motion in a second. So
Okay, it's in the last month's agenda. I just thought there's something that you're missing. It's okay. We can move forward. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Steve?
Thank you.
Okay, new business. We have the Meridian Parks and Rec Department classes and camps update with Jake.
Good evening.
Hello.
Happy New Year. Thank you for allowing me to come and talk about classes and camps. I'm happy to announce that classes and camps, in my opinion, are going really well. As we can see here, can everybody hear me okay? As we can see here, the first slide is a little bit of a snapshot of the revenue history dating back to 2014. As you can see, everything's been pretty consistent. Things are going well. Our instructors are doing a great job. I feel like the team that we have teaching through our activity guide, there's great buy-in. They communicate with our staff. They really care about the customer service that they provide, and they're really doing a good job. And I think that's showing in the numbers and the revenues that we're seeing the past 3 years. Currently, with our new fiscal year beginning on October 1, I pulled some numbers in comparison to those last year. For example, from October 1 to January 1 last fiscal year, our revenue was about $24,000. This year, we're a little bit over $28,000. So we're continuing to trend up. Things are looking good, and like I said, it starts with the people in our guide and the customer service upstairs with Allie and Jeanette. They do a great job answering the phone and keeping our customers informed, and do a great job with registrations, and they're organized, and they're pleasant, and I think all of those things combined really reflect in our numbers and the way things are going through classes and camps. That next slide is, I guess I've got everything here. What do we offer? What's available? On the left, you can see those are our core classes for the youth, and on the right, I've got core classes listed for adults. Along with the youth, we also have tumbling, hip hop, and jazz classes. Something new that we have this winter spring activity guide is drumline. Drumline is being offered by Music Center Studios, Amy Purdue. She's been in the guide before I got here. She's decided to come back and offer something, so she's a welcome addition this winter and spring. And also creative dramatics and theater games. Those are two classes that are new to the guide, and that's being offered by Treasure Valley Children's Theater. And we see Treasure Valley Children's Theater in the summer, so it's really nice that they've reached out and want to teach more often in our guide rather than the summer. On the adult side of things, Zumba and yoga. It's getting tough for our instructors to compete and continue to offer those classes, but they're doing a great job. And when I say that, it's tough to compete with the Crunch Fitness, the Axioms, because you can join those facilities for $29 a month and go to any classes unlimited you want. So our numbers with yoga and Zumba, they're holding strong, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how things play out as people kind of venture to those facilities due to price and simply more opportunities that those types of facilities are offering in the adult fitness realm. Some other classes I want to talk about: senior trips. Last year, our senior trips went really well. We filled up 2 trips to the Payette River. We took a float down. We threw our participants back in the van, drove up to Garden Valley, did a little shopping. I don't know if I suggest to go to Garden Valley shopping, but it's a good place to have some lunch and look at the colors as they start to turn towards fall. Our next senior trip is our McCall Winter Carnival. That's going to be taking place January 26th. We leave from the Meridian Community Center. Last year we took 13. This morning I checked, we have 28. So it's building. It's something that people they need to ride up there, the roads, and I'm compassionate about supplying things for seniors. So I'm happy to see those numbers increase for sure. Additional classes that join us in the summer. We have golf lessons. I believe his name is Peter Burton. He's the new pro over at Lakeview. We have adult classes and youth classes that are going to be offered. Tennis lessons. Treasure Valley Children's Tennis will be joining us this summer. They will be teaching youth classes. Youth classes take place at Heritage Middle School, Settlers Park, and Mountain View High School. Mountain View is new to us in our guide. Last summer, there was nothing on the north side of the freeway, and it was a welcome addition. So we will continue to offer tennis lessons for the youth over at Mountain View, and we'll have adult lessons at Settlers Park, again on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Also, Treasure Valley Children's Theater will continue to have classes this summer. And also something new that that is part of our summer guide is technology and science classes offered by Beverly Takuchi. She offers an app design class and game programming. So, in addition to the summer classes, we also have our summer camps. Last summer, our summer camps went crazy, and you see that acronym SMILE right there. We go through all of our training. We talk about the do's and don'ts as a staff, but I think the one thing, in my opinion, that's very important is I call it so many impacted lives every day. We have an opportunity to see in our summer camp alone, our Camp Meridian, we capped that at 50. My message to staff is really work hard to make a difference. And I think you're seeing that in our numbers. This past summer at Willow Creek, we were full. I think it was 6 out of the 9 weeks. And our numbers at Sienna increased as well. So I'm very fortunate to have a great staff. A number of those staff keep on coming back every year, so it kind of makes my job easy. I feel very comfortable with the 2 leaders that we have at each facility. And one thing that I'm excited about this summer is we are moving into a 3rd site, more than likely Discovery Elementary, here on this side of town, and we'll hope to have that solidified the beginning part of February. So revenue last year in Camp Meridian was just over 70. Compared that to the prior year is $66,000. Our average per week at Willow Creek were 48. Sienna, we had 39. And once again, I'm very fortunate to have a great staff that loves kids. I seek teachers and college-age students that are going into education. I think it's a great experience for them. And the teachers are a welcome addition because, 1, they love kids, 2, they're organized, and 3, they can lead the younger peeps in running a productive summer camp. So, Outdoor Adventure Camp. Expanded it this summer from 6 weeks to 9 weeks. This camp is, it's popular. Some of the activities that we do, it really kind of sells itself. Last summer on Mondays, we went to Asana Rock Climbing Gym and Zoo Boise. Tuesday, we had a gentleman from Nampa. Colin, do you remember his name? I can see his van and his shop out in Nampa. Howard. Yes, Howard from Howard's Tackle on Garrity in Nampa donated his time, all of his equipment to meet our group at Kleiner on Tuesday mornings, fished for 3 hours. Then once we got done fishing, we went over to the old Idaho Penitentiary. On Wednesdays, we did the Boise Watershed and paddleboarding. Thursdays, we went to Bogus and hiked Moores Mountain. And Fridays, we were on the river in Banks to Beehive Bend. So a lot of fun, sells itself. Looking forward to this summer. I think we have the same staff coming back, which excites me. It makes things easy and consistent. Looking at also putting some thought into having that camp meet over here at Centennial Park. With our numbers at Willow Creek, Monday mornings and the afternoons can be kind of hectic. We really don't need a building. We just need a place to meet, throw them in a van, and go. That way, if we get in a Centennial Park, kind of lends itself great for me. If we're missing paperwork, we need something from the office, I can run down there or walk down there and give it to them, and they can be on their way. So I think that'll work out great and something that I'm mulling over to possibly implement this summer. Let's Play Sports Camp. Skills and drills offered to kids ages 6 to 11. Essentially, this camp takes place at Heroes in Chateau Park. Soccer, football, basketball, soccer. Excuse me, I got soccer on there twice. Soccer, football, basketball. Baseball and softball should be the other one that's on there. So this camp is 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday through Friday. It gets a little difficult towards the later months because it gets hot. So staff does a great job of keeping them hydrated, keeping them engaged. Those numbers have done really well too. As you can see, our revenue's up, and I don't foresee that a decline in those numbers anytime soon. I think we've got, once again, fortunate enough that I believe our leader of that camp should be coming back as well. Kind of a summer camp 3-year history. One, I apologize that you have to kind of turn your head sideways to look at those numbers. It's because I'm not smart enough to figure out how to put them on there correctly. So I'm going to be honest with you. Things, reading left to right. In 15, in the summer day camp, in 16 we had a little dip, but last summer we got back up there where the numbers need to be. So I think we're in a good spot. And like I mentioned, it's really fortunate, got a great staff, you know, not only upstairs, but out in the field too. Pays off. Getting the word out. How do we get the word out? Our activity guide, produced 3 times a year. Our next one is obviously the summer activity guide, or as Shelley refers to it as the Fatty McPherson, because it gets bigger. There's the tennis that joins us and all these other classes that I talked about. So those call for proposals will go out in February. Guide will be released in April with classes starting in June. We'd like to get that out to parents before school ends, so they've got some time to plan their summer. This year, the last day of school is June 1st. Our guide will be released, I believe it's April 13th, so it gives moms and dads about a month and a half to plan and to know where their kids are going this summer. So, other marketing tools, city website. Shelley does a great job with Facebook. I encourage our instructors to provide me with flyers that I can send out through Rec 1 and also make available at our summer camps, hang at the community center, hang them up around town, Wahoo's, West Ada School District. So any way we can get the word about our classes is good. Where do these really cool classes take place? The community center, local elementary schools, got a great relationship with West Ada School District. Joe Yoakum's been awesome, especially on the camp side of things as we seek a third opportunity for parents for summer day camp. Local parks, Bree Nelson with Motions Dance Academy runs a number of camps and clinics at Kleiner during the summer in the band shell. Home court, we've got pickleball at home court. Other various locations as Ponderosa and Hunter Elementary. We have Inspired Dance that offer classes in there on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. So once again, West Ada has been great, and I look forward to working with them as we move forward. Where are we going? We're moving up. I think our community is growing. People are moving to Meridian. Our numbers show it. They reflect it. Our revenue shows it. It reflects it. What do we need? That's a picture of the space. So we need teachable space for our community ed instructors. So with that being said, I will stand for any questions and take your comments.
Jake, for getting the word out, I'm sure that flyers aren't sent out with students because that would be an astronomical amount of printing, but does West Ada help promote that through emails? Or I know that I get emails all the time for my son that...
Yeah, great question. They have that, I believe it's Peach Jar.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty spendy. It's about $25 a flyer.
Oh.
So
it's not free.
I checked. I've looked into it a couple times. Will we use it? I don't know. It's something that I need to run by our instructors before I commit to it because, one, if they're not going to take advantage and supply me with flyers, I don't want to go down that road if it's something that they're not willing to do. But, yeah, there is that opportunity, and we just it's in my opinion, it is expensive, and I don't know if that's something that we want to take on.
That. Okay.
So.
Anybody have any questions for Jake?
Madam President, would you mind going back to the Get the Word Out page as well?
You want me to go back?
Okay, yeah. So
right.
Okay. So it is on the city website, right? And that it's updated regularly and everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that was.
Well, summer stuff will be updated here shortly. I'm in the process of organizing our summer camps now. I've got the dates identified. I've got emails out to schools. So, as I get along in my planning stage, I try to update the website as well as schedules look like. But, yeah, as far as activity guide is current on there, and all the classes that are closed shouldn't show up through our catalog and our registration software. So,
To continue with the marketing idea, would it be possible, like, if that has all the information on there that is necessary for the classes, would it be, like Joe was mentioning about the schools, would it be possible just to have them email that link out to parents, and then that would cost less, or post on their websites?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that we could look into.
Okay. Cool.
I think a link to our catalog and registration software is a great idea. So, great question.
I had one more question. So the senior trip that you took, you guys were on the Payette River.
Yeah,
What was that?
we put in at Banks.
Okay.
And we float to Beehive Bend. We lost, well, a little old lady that, not this past summer, last summer, fell out. And I've never seen a guy 6'4", 250 move so fast flying across the boat. Jerk her, I mean, got her back in the boat pretty quick. But she was just, I mean, she was a trooper. She wasn't scared. I mean, she just is like, oh, that's a great time. And I'm following. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know. But
I was just thinking that's quite an adventure. But.
Yeah. So, I mean, they love it. Like I mentioned, this past summer, we took up, I took 2 trips, and both of them filled up. And the first trip was full of individuals that had just recently retired from Southern California, moved up, had never had an opportunity to do something like this before. And I tell you what, they were like kids on the way home. They had a blast. They enjoyed the river. They thought Idaho was beautiful. They loved the drive from Banks to Garden Valley. They kind of laughed at shopping at Garden Valley. They were like, oh, really? I mean, there's nothing here. But they enjoyed the lunch. It was just really neat to see. So it's a good day.
I, for one, appreciate that you do that and take the time for the seniors in the community.
Thank you.
Because it's true, it's hard to,
yeah,
I don't even like driving up there, so.
Yeah, I mean, those are the, I mean, they don't drive.
Yeah,
some of them don't have families around, so they need to be engaged and involved as well. So.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything? All right, great today. Well, thank you so
much.
Thank you. Okay, so next on the new business, we have ethics, open meetings, and bylaws. Emily, the boss.
Thank you. It really doesn't feel like it's on, but it must be on. Okay. I'm Emily Kane. I'm a deputy city attorney, and I think I've met all of you. So thank you for having me. I'm going to give you an overview of open meetings laws, commission bylaws, and governmental ethics rules. Poor Craig and John have heard this 4,000 times, so you can take a cookie break. I tried to change it a little bit, so it's not the exact same one. So let's move forward. So Idaho has an Open Meetings Act. It requires that all meetings of a governing body of a public agency shall be open to the public. And a governing body obviously is city council, but it also includes commissions that are authorized to make recommendations to city council. So open meeting laws do apply to you, which you probably already know because you have your agenda, it's noticed, you have minutes. Your meetings are open to the public. In fact, they're streamed, as you also know. Anyone can come. Rachel takes care of all your noticing requirements. There are rules about when that has to happen, 48 hours for regular meetings and 24 hours for special meetings. You need to follow your agenda pretty strictly, or as we just discussed briefly, if you can amend after you've already noticed and adopted your agenda. You just need to say why you're doing it without previously noticing it. It honestly is a much bigger deal for city council because there are a lot of things that the public does comment on. We'll talk a little bit more about public comment later. You also have to keep minutes. That's another requirement, and Rachel takes care of that for you as well. So there's a kind of a formula for determining whether a meeting is happening. You have to convene, obviously. You also must make a decision or deliberate toward a decision. A decision means that you have a quorum and you take some action. Deliberating means you're receiving, exchanging information or opinions, so communicating. The AG says that you should not attempt to get around the open meeting laws by having kind of these serial meetings, having less than a quorum present, having a go-between, contact everyone to see where you're at, and kind of almost like a straw vote. That's a no-no. Just do it right. So rather than quiz you, I'll just tell you. There are 5 commissioners at a barbecue talking about food. Is this a meeting? No. Doesn't include informal gatherings without deliberations. So you're just there enjoying each other's company. Just because you're commissioners doesn't mean we have to notice a meeting every time you get together. Is it a meeting where 5 commissioners are at a barbecue talking about whether Meridian Parks should have more bocce ball courts? It's not really a meeting. You're still an informal gathering, and that's not deliberating toward a decision. But if you're later asked to talk about this topic, you need to disclose that previous conversation. So it's really best to kind of stay away from foreseeable future topics. You have something in common. You are interested in parks, so not talking about parks is not a reasonable request. Just be aware of your conversations and, be cognizant of these requirements. So 5 commissioners at a barbecue, so you have a quorum. You're talking about a bocce ball court proposal that is on your upcoming agenda. Yes, that is a meeting. So if that's happening, unless that barbecue has been noticed and there's an agenda for the barbecue, you are in violation of the open meeting law. So even though it's, as I said, whenever a quorum convenes and deliberates, that is a meeting. Oh, is it a meeting when 4 commissioners are at a barbecue talking about a bocce ball court proposal that is on your upcoming agenda? Technically, no, but you're violating the spirit of the law, so don't do that. It isn't really a violation. It looks really bad. It's really bad form. You really need to stay away from that. That's that serial meeting that the AG's office guards us against. Next topic, ex parte communications. Ex parte communication is receiving information or opinions off the record, so outside of this meeting, regarding a matter that's before you. So informal conversations with citizens, someone calls you or emails you, even if it's unsolicited, or more commonly, kind of going to a site, doing research, doing interviews, gathering information that you did not hear within the confines of this meeting. This rule really only applies in the context of a quasi-judicial capacity, so you do a lot of legislative functions. You talk about policies and ideas, so this is really where if you're reviewing kind of a proposal or a specific, you don't really have applications, but a more specific project. So that's where you need to be careful about being fair. Ex parte communications is about due process, so it's a constitutional issue, not just a government ethics issue. The Supreme Court has weighed in. They say when a governing body deviates from the public record, it essentially conducts a second fact-gathering session without proper notice. So you're doing commission business without anyone knowing about it. So try to avoid ex parte communications. You can't be held to a standard of disinterestedness. You live here, you love the parks, you're interested in making a decision that is good for your community and incorporates what you know about your community. If you also know people within the community, people do want to talk to you about parks, and that's okay. If you receive unsolicited information, well, I'll start with the best practice is to say, I'm so sorry, that's pending before the commission. I'd love to hear from you, but please come to the meeting. So really kind of funnel as much as you can the comments to the meeting. If that doesn't happen, if you receive inadvertent ex parte communication, you just need to disclose that at the meeting. You just say, I talked to this person, a name is best, and give a general description about what you talked about and the nature of your conversation. So if you if you go to a proposed site of a future bocce ball court that's on an upcoming agenda, so you can see what it's like, that's a no-no. That's inappropriate ex parte information gathering. That's gathering facts, gathering information that visit is not properly noticed. If you live near the site and you drive by there every day, you don't have to start taking a new route to work. You just need to probably disclose that on the record. Say, hey, I live near there, so I go by there all the time. And I just thought you should know that. So you do observe generally more probably than someone who hasn't been there, but you're not there to learn about, its suitability for a bocce ball court. So that's okay. If you as a commission want to make a site visit, that's why we notice and take minutes of your site visits, because you're all together having a meeting and gathering information all together. So that is not inappropriate ex parte information gathering. Public testimony. The open meeting law does not require you to take public comments or public testimony, but the commission president may allow that. So you can set it up either on your agenda, or you can acknowledge people that are at the meeting. You don't have to unless it's a public hearing. An executive session is something that you all don't have to deal with very often. In my tenure here, the Parks Commission has had one executive session. It's an exception to the rule that all meetings are public. And it's things like personnel and contract negotiations and receiving legal advice, so it really doesn't come up very often for you. However, if you think you need to do that, please talk to me in advance, because we do need to notice that in a particular way. Oh, phone call meetings. So this meeting could take place by telephone if one person were here at City Hall. So just one person has to be there to physically be present for the meeting. I don't know how that rule came about, but that's what the statute requires. The communications have to be audible to everyone, obviously, so it needs to be speakerphone, and voting can't be secret. There can't be email or text voting. Can you deliberate by email? No. That email is a great way to have a secret meeting. It doesn't feel like it because maybe you're all there or 5 of you are there, but it is, there's no notice, there's no physical presence requirement is not being met as with the phone, and no one can hear you. So you have violated the open meeting law if you're deliberating over email. If it's figuring out scheduling or doing logistical administrative stuff, that's not deliberation. You can do that by email if you wish. Meeting or any actions taken in violation of the open meeting law are void, which means they essentially never happened. Anything that comes out of that is also void, and the fix is to start over. So if you purposely violate the law, if you make an effort in bad faith to violate the law, then you could be sued personally. So, and anyone can sue. So please don't do that. You could also be prosecuted. It's unheard of. Okay, your bylaws. Well, I'll start with city code provisions that affect you. It's in Title II, Chapters 1 and 4. Welcome to read it. I won't read it to you, thank goodness. It requires you to do an annual report to City Council. Rachel also makes sure that you do that every year. The commissioner term, when the commissioner term expires, that position is noticed. You can reapply for that position, and we encourage you to do that, but that's been a change in the last few years. After 2 successive terms, the third term has to be approved by a city council vote. That's the only way to re-up for a third term. And being absent for half of the meeting in 12 months is subject to automatic dismissal. There's no longer you can get excused, or unfortunately, no matter how good your excuse is, an absence is an absence. Your bylaws do say that committee meetings must comply with the open meetings law. There's actually a debate within the legal field about whether that is required by the law. I don't read the law to require your committees to comply with open meetings laws. your bylaws require it, and again, Rachel really helps you take care of that. So your committee meetings are noticed, you do have minutes, and so you are fully compliant. The appearances before the commissioner at the discretion of the council, I'm sorry, it says council, commission president. The commission president sets the agenda and just decides how the meeting is going to go. It's her meeting. Elections are in December, and the sitting vice president is automatically nominated for president, as we were reminded last month. Moving right along, I'll just hit the highlights. There's a slew of ethics and governance requirements, but these are the ones that are most likely to affect you. Okay, self-interested contracts. This is a rule that says you may not be interested in contracts with the cities. It's called a self-interested contract. There are exceptions, which really are for you. You are non-compensated officials. Anytime you have a question, contact me. It's a fact-specific analysis, or anyone in my office. We'd be glad to help you figure out what you need to do. Exceptions include if there really isn't anyone else that provides the service locally, if it's a disaster, if you have a remote interest in the contract, so your company, essentially your employer, is contracting with the city, you do need to, in that case, make a written disclosure. And there's also exceptions for unpaid commissioners. As I mentioned, there's a competitive bidding process it's not complicated to do it, but you need to hit a half a dozen points to make sure that you're compliant with this exception provision. So if this comes up, if you or someone in your family or it's not your family, it's someone in your household, so your immediate family is entering into a contract with the city, please let me know and we can kind of work through that. Conflicts of interest sometimes come up. It's you need to follow certain procedures when you're asked to make a decision as a commissioner that will benefit you or a household member personally or professionally. So there's a perception that if you have a conflict of interest that you're shut down, that you cannot participate, but that's not exactly true. You just need to disclose that. We just need to be aware of that. So step one, again, is contact me. If we'll do the analysis, if we find no conflict, you can just proceed normally as you would in any other meeting. If we do find a conflict, you have to follow the process of providing a written statement. The commission then, as a whole, would consult the city attorney's office. We'd give you advice and help work you through that. So in the end, the commission ultimately can vote on whether or not to excuse you from voting or deliberating. Gifts and favors, you may not, in the course of your official duties, accept gifts of more than $50 in value. You cannot accept any gift that you think is intended to influence your actions on the commission. And you cannot make any special favors, grant any special favors to people by virtue of your great power on the commission. There are consequences if you violate the ethics laws. We'd like to keep you out of trouble. So it's really that acting in bad faith when these come into play. So just make good decisions and call me if you need me. Conclusion, I've created this acronym to help you remember the important things that you need to keep in mind as you are commissioners. Is there a personal benefit to you? Is something that you're doing with the commission benefiting you or a household member personally? Avoid ex parte information. If you receive it, please disclose it. Notice, just be aware of, am I having a meeting right now? Am I deliberating? Am I doing something in violation of the open meeting law? Notice is the safest way to avoid that. Gifts, don't accept gifts. Self-interested contracts, you guys are probably okay, but let's work together to make sure that you are compliant. If you have any questions, here's our contact information. You know where to find us. There's also the Attorney General's office has some good instructional manuals if you want to really dig into these juicy topics. So there that is. Any questions?
President? I was wondering about the third successive term. Does that also apply for youth commissioners?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, yes.
Okay.
It does. Good question. Others? If you think of any, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so going on to old business, we have Mike Barton with the South Meridian Regional Park Project update. Did I miss one? Oh, impact fees. Sorry, Steve. I was just skipping past you. You've already been talking.
You know what?
You've hit your minutes.
Just so interesting that I can see why you wanted to skip right past it. I will try and make it brief, though.
It is interesting, but you're okay. You're okay on time.
It is important. If it's not interesting, it's at least it's very important to us.
So is it ever different?
And I want to start by acknowledging Commissioner John Nesmith. John sits on the Impact Fee Committee, as well as the Parks Commission, and he's on that committee to represent the interest of the Parks Commission. So we probably should have had him up here making this presentation, but I'll do my best to. But honestly, John's at all the meetings and represents the interests of the Parks Commission and the Parks Department on it. I just wanted to give you an update because there is a current effort underway. I'll give you the general overview, and then I'll dive into the specifics. So in general, here's the general of what's happened. Impact fees were reviewed through a study and a big analysis and computation. Primarily, that study was done in 2013. They were adopted in 2014, basically 3 years ago. When the study was done, the Impact Fee Committee made a recommendation to the City Council of the level of impact fees that they thought should be adopted. The amounts that were adopted were lower than the recommendation. Joe?
Could you maybe just for people who don't know what an impact fee is, briefly explain what that is real quick? Sorry.
So park impact fees are what we use to build parks. We cannot use park impact fees for staff or operations. Those have to come out of the general fund, but they can build parks. Here's the theory behind impact fees. At any point in time, you could say the existing residents have paid for the parks that we have today. And the idea behind park impact fees are that growth should pay its own way. Growth should pay for itself. So there is an impact fee that's assigned to a building permit. So if I were building a new house, I would, in addition to my water and sewer hookup charges, I would pay a park impact fee for that building permit. And that park impact fee would go into the budget for available funds to construct parks, and the level of that fee is set at what it would take to keep the level of service, which means acres of parks per 1,000 people in the city, static, so that we don't lose ground with the number of parks acres per 1,000 as the city continues to grow. So, Kayla?
Thank you. So are the impact fees specific to certain areas, or is just overall the entire city of Meridian?
Overall, entire city.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the entire city is treated as one area. And that's actually better. It provides the most flexibility and the ability to develop as areas grow. So, about 5 years ago, the impact fee for parks was about $1,300. I can't remember the rest of the dollars. $1,360-ish, $50-ish dollars per single-family house. During the last study, because we had our level of service had dropped, we had money in the bank that hadn't been spent yet. The impact fee calculation actually went down. So the total amount that could be charged went from the $1,300 to $1,113. The amounts that were actually approved and adopted were $1,080.72 for single-family homes and 767 for multifamily dwellings. The impact of that decision, so the difference, just to point it, the single-family rate was lowered by $32.28 below what would have to be charged to keep the level of service constant. The multifamily home fee was dropped by $345.48 per unit. So what does that mean in terms of, you know, what's the impact of that? Well, finance ran the calculations. Over the previous 3 fiscal years, the amount of revenue that was foregone basically would have been paid if they had adopted the full impact fee, but did not, was $529,000. So over the last 3 years, we would have got an additional $500,000, $500,000 that could go towards park construction, say at South Meridian or elsewhere, but instead would have to be made up in another way, the general fund that you know, basically all taxpayers pay into. And South Meridian Regional Park is a great example of that, because for the 3 parks that have been under construction this last year in Rita Husky, Keith Bird Legacy Park, and Hillsdale are completely funded by park impact fees. South Meridian Regional Park, our phase 1 proposal, there was not enough park impact fees left to build phase 1. So the phase 1 construction dollars are split between park impact fees and general fund dollars. There's both funds that are helping to build that park. In a nutshell, what's happening is there's an ordinance. It actually had its 2nd reading last night at City Council. 3rd reading is next Tuesday. And next Tuesday there will be a public hearing on the idea of increasing the park impact fees to what the recommendation of the committee was 3 years ago. Concurrently, or kind of moving forward, the idea is that it's time for a new study. So this is kind of an interim fix. But what the intent to do is, let's at least bring them up to where they woulda, coulda, shoulda been 3 years ago, and let's do a new study starting this year, and do a new analysis and adopt new impact fees down the road. So that process takes, you know, roughly a year. It could be less, it could be more. So there will be a proposal before the City Council that will have a public hearing starting next Tuesday to take public testimony on the adoption of the full impact fees, not just for parks, but police and fire also have impact fees that are part of this same effort. So parks, police, fire. Police and fire have impact fees that are tied to commercial as well, but there are no commercial impact fees for parks. All of our impact fees are tied to residential, not commercial, because it's the addition of people and homes that have the primary impact on demands for parks. We don't currently have an impact fee associated with pathways, and I actually recommend that we don't go there. The reason is that we already have ordinances in place to require development to build pathways as the development process moves forward. If we charged impact fees and require development to pay it, that would be double dipping, as it were. So our current model, I think, works pretty well, where development builds pathways where they develop, and we, through the general fund, fill in the gaps and build pathways where we find those gaps that need to be completed. That's really it in a nutshell. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the current effort to raise the park impact fees to their recommended levels from the impact fee committee, and what would the change mean moving forward? There were, at least based on projections of building permits, Our actual is always different than projections, but based on the projections that the finance department has, the single family, if increased by $32.28 over the next 6 years, and frankly, we would hope to have a brand new one adopted before that. But if it held, it would bring in an additional $161,667 based on current projections, and the multifamily would bring in an additional $219,000 for a total of $381,255. So these aren't huge numbers in terms of millions, but they are enough to fund an additional shelter or some shade or some amenities in the parks. So we think it's the right thing to do. From a certain perspective, no one likes additional fees. But if philosophically you believe that growth should pay its way, this is the mechanism that would accomplish that. So I will stand for any questions or ask John if he has anything to add as the member that's been on the committee working on this for the last year.
I think you did a great job. So,
Madam President,
Yes.
I got a question, a couple, actually.
Is your mic on? I'm not sure if it is.
Is it, okay, that's better. First is, why wasn't their recommendation adopted? And the second one on that is, what took so long to get this thing in place now? Growth's been booming for the last couple of years now, and we've fallen further and further behind. We're trying to get, there's been times in our history where we've got nothing done because we didn't have the money, and everything balloons up, and exactly is what the impact fee is for, is to cover this exact situation.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that I have a full answer for you. I don't know fully why the single-family one was reduced by such an odd amount. Multifamily, there was a general feeling at the time that multifamily projects come with their own little parks, their own amenities, and it would create less of a demand on the park system. My assertion is that single-family subdivisions also come with common area open spaces and usually HOA parks. And I think that people that live in multifamily dwellings come to movie night and attend classes and come to have the demand for parks just as much as single-family dwelling families. I don't see a strong distinction. So in my mind, they should be the same. But that was the justification for reducing the multifamily impact fee.
recommended reducing it?
What's that?
Who recommended reducing it?
It was a discussion at the city council level, and there were developers, BCA, some
of course, developers and
multifamily
BCA want it
projects.
lower.
Yeah.
Sure, but they made a strong case that it was going to impact development negatively, and they won the day.
Madam President. Steve, what's your crystal ball on next week and them asking you to conduct a study before you implement the remaining gap that was initially suggested?
So the study's already been done. I think the justification's there. I don't have a crystal ball, but I wouldn't expect a new study to be needed before being able to take the recommendation that's already on the table. A new study would be done, though, to change them in any other way. Okay. So I think the proposal that will be discussed is, can we move them to the level that was originally authorized by the study that has been done, and then can we initiate a new study to see where they should be today?
Madam President, just wondering, you may not have this information, but our city has been growing lately, and would the families be able to pay this increased fee? Do we have any information if the families would be able to do that? Is that a problem at all, or no?
Well, that's a loaded question. I don't know that I have a direct answer. Yeah. Any additional fee is a hardship. I think that's just just a fact. If I were building a new house and I had an additional fee, it's more that I would have to come up with. So that's the downside. But again, the question is, if I'm building a home, is it fair for the existing residents to expect me to pay my fair share to keep the park acres consistent?
Madam President?
Yeah.
So if I may, one of the things Steve, or that we discussed on the, in the meetings was, and it's certainly my consensus, but is whether or not new development should pay for growth. You know, and so that was really a heavy topic of discussion, and it was my consensus is we got a wonderful community, great parks department, why put Meridian on sale? And so if you're building a new house, you might be able, hopefully you can afford to do that.
Yeah.
But certainly it's a great question you bring up. So
What are we talking,
that's
30
kind of the
bucks?
whole discussion of the
Single
balance
family.
between developers
Okay.
and, you know, it's a touchy subject, so.
John,
So-
with that, what's the median income or price of a home in Meridian today?
To something. Trey, you might know?
I don't have that information, I'm sorry.
$32
think
really
it's
isn't a
290.
burden
Oh,
on a
yeah.
$200,000 home.
219 or 229,
you know?
something like
So we're not
that.
talking a burden
Oh,
per
okay.
family.
I misunderstood then.
The other thing is, where do we rank in the valley with impact fees?
Great question.
Steve, to go with that, if you go to the website, there actually was an ordinance that was passed in 2014, and it has information on how we rank with other cities, as well as the impact fees that are current. You can download.
Do you have it? Because I don't have that information with me.
I do.
I know that last time I looked.
This
that-
was 2014.
Okay, go ahead.
Single-family residence. So it has police, fire, parks, total fees per dwelling unit for a single family were $1767.51, and multifamily were $1454.31. Non-residential was 36 cents per square foot. And then ranking with the other cities,
And again, that's combined parks, police, and fire,
that's
right?
all.
That's combined.
Yes, that's all of
Okay.
them combined. Yes. And if I can keep this from rotating. So they have comparison between current and proposed. Maybe that wasn't between cities. No, it was just between current and proposed.
Joe, or Madam President, they did do some, I think we were lower than Boise, if memory serves me correctly. But it's.
I know that
it's-
finance
that's
has
what-
looked at that, and we could
Yeah.
get that out.
We were certainly
to the
wanting to
commission.
be competitive with our neighbors, specifically with Boise, not necessarily with Nampa, Caldwell, because it's a little bit different, more agricultural that way. But, and it was our hope to not try to screw up in respect to your question, affect a year from now. But we certainly thought that back the mentality was
Wow.
that, and they've since done some studies that lowering impact fees doesn't really help development grow. And the studies came back and the answer is no, it doesn't. You lower impact fees, it doesn't make people build houses because it just doesn't work like that. So, and then unfortunately development of parks and stuff and infrastructure gets behind. So that was our hope on the committee, is that we raise them up to what the study recommended, and hopefully our friends in city council agree. But and then hopefully when we do the new study, I don't know if it goes up or down or whatever, but my hope is that they just follow it.
Yeah, like the last study, it went down.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
We don't
'cause
know what the
level of
impact is until
service
we do the
and-
study.
Yeah,
So John,
exactly.
the recommendation you guys did looked at the other cities and where they were at in comparison, and our recommendation was right there with them then, correct?
The study was
Yeah.
with them, yeah.
Okay.
So the
So,
study
'cause they-
itself is independent of what anyone
Right.
else pays. The study is what are the costs, what is the population,
Right.
what's the level of service, and what does it take to keep the level of service constant regardless of what anyone else does. But the question always comes up, and if you tune into the hearing next week, I'm sure it's going to come up, and I know finance has done an analysis on that to say, you know, where are our impact fees in relation to surrounding cities.
Right.
Madam President, so the study tells us how to maintain, but I guess my point is, okay, impact fees are to pay for new parks. So if we doubled the impact fee, we'd have a lot more really nice parks. So the study's sort of a moot point to me. It's like we can set that fee at whatever we want. The city council could, or whoever, right? We could set it at $1,300. We could set it at $5,000 per house, and they may not like it, but isn't it an arbitrary number for us to have nice parks?
Actually, it's not, because you're limited. You can only set the number at what your current level of service is. So you have to take your existing park acreage divided by your existing population. That's your acres per thousand. You cannot charge a fee that would grow that acreage and make it a bigger, nicer park system. You can only add park acres with impact fees that would keep the acres per thousand constant.
Madam President.
And is that state law, city?
That's state law.
Okay.
So basically, it's a ratio, correct?
It's a ratio.
And it's just a standard, consistent ratio.
Yep.
Okay.
If in oversimplified terms, if you took existing park acres divided by existing population, you get an acres per thousand. And then if you look at projected populations over the next 10 years, you would come up with a number of acres that would have to be added to keep the level of service constant. Yep. You multiply that times the cost of developing an acre and divide that by the number of permits that would be issued to get to that population, and you have your number. I mean, that's the calculation.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Madam President?
Yeah.
I have one question, Steve. So does that include parks that are in process of being put in place?
So
when you're
great
talking
question.
about the acreage.
What we have talked about with legal is that if the funds are obligated, then they would count. So we would expect to be able to count the phase 1 area of South Meridian Regional Park because those funds, as of last night, are officially approved and obligated by contract.
Okay.
But projects that we have in the plans don't count.
Don't count. Okay.
And Steve, so the impact fees for the city of Boise are designated per area. So they vary in fee structure based on the location. You know, airport planning areas are less. So the lowest one I see is $344, but that is with a dwelling unit less than 700 square feet. And the highest one that I see is $3,087, and that is Southeast Barber Valley planning area. And so that it's all based on square footage. It's a sliding scale.
Yep.
You guys
That's
can
based
find
on a
that
theory that different square footages mean different populations per household.
Sure.
We need to double check this in the next study with planning, but the last numbers I saw from Compass and the census, the persons per household between single family and multifamily in Meridian were nearly identical, maybe different by 0.1 persons per household. But we need to verify what that is with the next study. That's why I say I don't think there's a big differentiation. A dwelling unit's a dwelling unit for the most part in Meridian. And while individual dwelling units will vary, the average seems to be fairly constant.
And they are listed. If you guys want to do a search, it's just impact fee schedule. So you can go to different cities to view that information.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Okay, now we're going on to old business. So we have South Meridian Regional Park project update with Mike Barton. That mic is having some problems there.
Something's, this one's on. I think I might stay away from that. So, good news, wanted to give you an update. We went to City Council yesterday afternoon with a bunch of contracts to begin construction of Phase 1 for South Meridian Regional Park. And this is parts and pieces of the presentation that I gave to the City Council that is just a look back and then kind of a look at our timeline and our process and where we're going, and then you can get an idea of some of the costs involved and our budget. So really what I want to talk about is that, exactly what I said, the process and project schedule, some of the steps that we took to get the cost down to that fit in the budget. I mean, we started out with a full program, and I'll get into some more details on that. And then just the bid strategy, the results, what our budget is going forward, and then we did talk about LED lights for the softball fields versus metal halide, and I'll inform you of that decision. And then some of the future contracts and just the contract award. We're going to start construction. So some of the process that we went through, really this brings us all the way back to when we did the master plan, the park system-wide master plan, and it really, through our surveys and our stakeholder meetings and meetings with the commission and the council, we identified the next regional park as a high need in South Meridian. They don't have a Settlers Park, they don't have a Kleiner Park, although South Meridian is acres per thousand is served really well. There isn't a regional park, a destination park, so that site was chosen as the next park to develop. And through that process, we worked on the concept design. And if you remember back, there was some of you remember, probably some of you don't. There was a fiveplex for softball that was identified as a need, and at the time there was a pond and a bunch of parking, and you know, that concept was taken to several neighborhood meetings and commission and council, and that was adopted along with the master plan. So we kind of picked up on that concept and then worked our way through schematic design, and you've been part of that process, at least most of you have, over the course of the last year to year and a half, with meetings along the way, and you can see that some of the naming that we've begun, and we have to complete that process. We hope to be back with the exploration park models by now, but Stephanie, I talked to her right before Christmas, and we were kind of strategizing on if she was going to be ready for the January meeting, and at that time she bought a one-way ticket. Her father was sick to go be with them and stuff, so she's back. I talked to her the other day, and we'll have something at the next meeting that we can kind of finalize that process and then take it forward to the city council, and hopefully we get a permanent name attached to the park instead of just South Meridian.
And she has an extra week.
She does. I forgot. Yeah, it's got an extra week. Some of the models she's going to rely on some of the other local artists, Ken McCall, who did the Heroes Park structure, to kind of help her with the feasibility of what can actually be built. So there's a little bit of process there. And then construction, which is going to start middle of February and last through December. And as soon as the grass is, it's going to be grass seed, not sod, so it's going to take a little bit of establishment time. And as soon as that's ready for park opening, we're going to open up the park in the summer of 2019. But there'll be plenty to see for sure, and we'll do parks tour this fall for sure. We'll be out there, and it'll really look like something. So let me pause there. Are there any questions that before I keep going? Okay. So part of that ongoing process that we've been going through over the last year and a half, and really we did a lot of this process in earnest prior to the budget, but it was kind of this cost reduction planning and what's in phase one and what gets pushed to future phases, and what do we reduce the cost of, or what do we value engineer. And you can go across the bottom, and when we started, we had a full program, and we said we want 5 softball fields, we want a maintenance shop, we want a pond, the restrooms and all these all these items. And as we were working through schematic design, we started to get cost back on some of this stuff. And the first cost we got were $13 million. So there was just no way that we were going to afford that in phase one. And really, it doesn't mean that they're out. It means that they're going to be pushed to future phases, like Settlers Park was built in numerous phases. And it's not phase one, phase two. It's phase one, and we're going to add an obstacle course, or we're going to add some more parking, or 2 more shelters, or whatever the collectively we all think the need is. Then that will be our phase two, and we'll build the thing out as we go along. So the blue numbers are our schematic design estimate, and then the yellow or gold numbers is the construction actual. And you can see some of the items that we took the landscaping from 1.9 million to right about 700,000. I mean, we had shaping and boulders and stuff in there, and acreage and a lot of the landscaping went with the 3 softball fields that were cut. So there's some savings there, but it was a pretty robust effort to get this thing down to where we can actually meet budget. We didn't cut anything from the splash pad, the sand and water, or the destination playground. Those costs we kept the same. We thought that those amenities were worthy of, let's do whatever we can to just maintain that kind of status quo on those, because that's really the heart of the park, and we wanted to keep that. So our bid strategy, like we did on the other parks, was let's bid it in the winter when contractors can actually sit down and look at it, not just toss numbers around. Bids were actually sent to 133 different contractors. It was broken up into 16 different bid packages, from site work to concrete, plumbing, HVAC, landscaping, block, fencing, all that stuff. We received 30 bids. The bigger bid packages, like the site work and the landscaping, we had 4 bids on each one of those, which was fantastic. We did have 2 of the bid packages we didn't get any bids on, but they were relatively small. They're painting and drywall. So drywall has insulation in it, and painting is primarily the restroom building. It's the interior and the restroom doors, some of the metal frames and stuff. So not a huge deal on that one. So the results are as follow. You can see that, just the biggest one was the site work, and that's Knife River. If you go down the list of contractors, and some of the names you may recognize, some you may not, we have a good team that's going to build the park. Knife River is the same contractors that did the Ustick Road widening, and they're starting to work on Pine Avenue, so they're not like a one truck. It's a first-class company, and same with Franz Whitty Landscaping, and Anvil Fence, and Outland Steel. Trace Layton is Layton Enterprises to do the trusses on the restroom building. At DNA Door, they've done all of our stuff, restroom partitions and stuff like that. So we've got a great team on it. So the overall, this is the post-bid project budget, and you can see some of the fees going down that include, if you go back and you look, and the sum of all the construction items was $3.8 million, but it's like, what does the park cost? Well, it's 6.75. So this gives you an idea of where the costs are, in addition to contracts such as Idaho Power, the A&E fees. One of the bigger items in here that is not in the contracts, that hasn't been awarded yet, is the destination playground, the splash pad, and the sand and water, and that's going to come back. We're still working on the design, and you'll see those designs as we go forward. So we have a company already under contract that we vetted through an RFP process to both design and install that, but it's a design build project for them. So we're going to work through designs, we're going to get prices, we're going to work with you guys and the city council with those designs and pricing and execute contracts here coming up probably early summer. So there's general conditions that pays for the site supervision and trailer and the items, you know, the stormwater, the SWIP stuff, that comes out of that general conditions number. Those are allowances, so the general conditions and the contingency are both allowances. Those are not bids. So if you go down the line, go down the entire list, and you see that we're actually over budget, but we think that there's going to be some savings in the construction contingency. It's over 10% of the construction, so that's pretty healthy. We'll know right away. The contingency is really used for if they get out digging and all of a sudden they dig up an old tractor that got buried out there. You know, who pays for it? Well, that comes out of that line item. So we think there's going to be some savings there, and we're going to balance. I mean, we could have balanced it. We could have reduced those numbers to balance it, but that would have been too contrived. And these are numbers we've been carrying the whole time, so we kept them in. And then we had a conversation about softball field lighting. Right now, the current electrical bid has softball field lights. They're metal halide. They're not LED lights. So we asked the council yesterday afternoon if they wanted LED lights, we would need to bring back a budget amendment for $225,000. And basically the council said, you know, the metal halide are fine. They save a little bit of energy, but we tried to, Idaho Power has a rebate program that they offer for parking lot lights where they'll rebate a good percentage of the cost of a LED conversion. And we had them look at the field lights at Story Park, and they said they don't qualify because they're not on long enough. There wouldn't be enough of a savings. So really, it's hard to quantify that number, but it's not enough of it saves a little bit of energy, but it's not enough, you know, in dollars and cents. It might take 20 to 30 years to make the cost back. So at this time, and the other thing is if we put in 4 more fields, it's not 225, it's double that, if not more. So going forward, it's an expense. You'd want to do all the fields the same. It's an expense that, you know, we're totally comfortable with, and City Council didn't want to or direct us to come back with a budget amendment. So that was that, and some of the future contracts. The 2 bid packages we didn't get. We'll be negotiating those. And then, like I said, the design build part, the destination playground, splash pad, sand and water, the entry sign, and some artwork. We need to provide a little bit of road trust for that mid-mile collector where the park touches where the mid-mile collector goes. We can't build it because we can't get across that out parcel on Lake Hazel. So we have to trust for our portion. We have to trust for our half plus 12 and every part of the park that touches that. So it's about $150,000 number. We think. We haven't got a staff report back from ACHD yet, but we're anticipating that. And then a purchase order for construction management and the general conditions. But all of those are accounted in the budget right now. And so the good news is we are off and running, and I'll stand for questions.
So the total amount is, so the list that you had was 6. The total amount you just are showing right now is 3.
Right.
So that's because that's just part of the phase?
If I could interject, the 3 million is the amount of the contracts to be awarded right now.
Okay.
The 6 million includes everything, including what his last slide was, that shows contracts yet to come. But we have a budget for those. So if you add all the contracts plus everything budgeted that's yet to come, that's the $6 million number.
Correct.
And so in your A&E fees, is that in segments for design and then for construction? That's really high. I'm just curious
It's
on
about 10%. Yeah, and you know what? That's a great question and a great point. And the reason that some of that is higher than it would be normally is that the amount of work that's going into phase one that is the backbone of the project, and things had to be designed that will support the back half. So we have to do improvements to Lake Hazel Road with deceleration and acceleration lanes, and then a turn lane in. So that's part of that.
So probably 60% is civil, I'm guessing.
There's there's a huge civil
goes.
component with that. There's water. There's no sewer on site. So we have septic. So the whole septic system had to be designed and, work through the approval process with Department of Health and DEQ. And it's a pressurized septic tank, so there was pretty intricate. Also, the irrigation pump system had to be engineered in such a way that will support the back half. There's just costs that it started out higher, and we actually negotiated it down, and they just recently, or just this week, we negotiated $25,000 worth of construction administration back into the contract to look at submittals that are going to come in that weren't part of the original scope.
Yeah.
So because we took a small restroom out and some other things, we kind of reduced their scope a little bit. They can do some construction administration.
Good.
So
let them be liable. Because that goes through the RFP process, right? You guys do request for
we did.
proposal. Okay.
Yeah, we sure did.
Okay.
Madam President, so when you talk about how you took away some of the amenities for cost reasons and they can come back in different phases.
Yeah.
So we talk about the first phase. I guess, so what's taken out that we previously talked about, like in the fall? I see like tot lot has nothing, but what is the tot lot?
So the tot lot, we had between the two softball fields, if you remember the design, there was a small playground in the tot lot that we're calling a tot lot.
So you took that out for phase one, but that doesn't mean that it's not coming at all. It just means as far as this budget, it's not in it.
Correct.
And that goes with the other shelters. So in the phase, overall for what we budgeted, everything we talked about previously for phase one is still in here, except for the things noted on this graph.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not sure that we did talk about all of the other, like the maintenance shop and.
No, but the off-leash area, so the dog park, that's completely out?
That's out.
But then later there's a bid that had some dog, but I guess that was for something else. Okay. One of the companies that got the bid.
Oh,
I thought
Lucky
it was,
Dog?
Yes.
They're building the shelter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so there's no dog park now?
No.
There's no dog park?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam President,
Yes.
when we talked to council last night, I think if we found some more money, had some savings, I think the first priority to go back in would be additional picnic shelters. But there's a lot of amenities that we would like to see come. They'll just have to come in additional phases. This isn't a phase one, phase two thing like Mike said. This is a phase one is this, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are yet to come. And this thing will be put together in phases over time. The good news is the theme is intact. It's still very much the discovery theme is alive and well that we've talked about. It's just that this first phase, given the realities of budget, needs to be focused on the initial infrastructure, and then we can add the amenities as time goes on.
One of the things that I don't think I touched on was that down at the bottom, the difference, so we got all these bids, and the difference between the total of the high bids and the total of the low bids was $1.1 million.
Oh.
We got a gift. I mean, it was absolutely, we were shocked, because all we've been hearing for the last year is how busy people are, how expensive things are. Costs have gone up. People are charging whatever they want because there's not enough labor in the valley. I mean, this is, it seems expensive, and it's just, but in this climate right now, this is fantastic.
And then one more question. So do you have a separate company doing the construction management?
We do.
SCM company?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Kreisenbeck Construction.
Oh, okay.
Constructors.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did the maintenance shop. They did the dog park.
Awesome.
And they're awesome.
Yes, they are. Okay.
Madam President
Yes.
and Mike, maybe talk for just a second about the ad alternates, because just tagging on to what you were talking about, this bid being a gift, we structured the bid with many ad alternates, thinking we were not going to get everything, that we were going to have to pick and choose even from what we did put out. And while some things are cut or not, or postponed, if you will, there are things that we thought we were going to have to postpone that we do not have to postpone. The good news is we were able to afford everything, including all of the ad alternates we put out, with the exception of the upgrade of metal halide to LED lights. But you want to just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we had a base bid, then we had 6 different alternate bids. So we could, like Steve said, pick and choose, or maybe we just take the base and just, that's all we can afford. And the items that were ad alternates were the big picnic shelter, which is a 30 by 42 picnic shelter, the softball field lights, the gravel overflow parking lot,
the outdoor stage.
Yeah, the outdoor stage and classroom. And actually the softball field lights, there were 2 alternates. So lights with metal halide and lights with LED. And there's one more, I think.
The landscape area on the...
Oh, the extra green up on the corner of the entrance drive in Lake Hazel, which is about almost 4 acres, 3.8 acres of grass and trees. So all that's in. So we didn't even have to choose. We didn't have to come back with a, hey, what do you want to do? Priorities. What's a priority to you? Because we just can't afford it. So
great news.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yes.
Madam President?
Yes.
So just to interject, this is just a win-win for everyone, in my opinion. I mean, you have citizens in South Meridian who will get a new park that have wanted, something to connect them to something that North Meridian or Central Meridian has had for years. And so now they have something in South Meridian. So even if it goes in phases, there's going to be some citizens in South Meridian who are very excited for this addition. So I think this is a win-win. I think you guys did a great job preparing for this park. I think it's going to be loved by thousands for generations to come. So I applaud you guys for your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and it's going to be exciting to see it. I mean, when we bring forward some of the ideas that are in progress for the destination playground and the climbing wall that's the map of Idaho, and the sand and water play, and some of those amenities are they're fabulous. I mean, we have $650,000 to put into it for stuff for kids to play on, and adults to bring their children there, and grandparents to take part in, and yeah, it's awesome. Anything else? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we have the Trailhead on 10 Mile Road update with Kim Warren.
Hello, Madam President and Commission members. I have just a few slides for you, so hopefully we'll wrap in good time. How's my distance? So this is the 10-mile road trailhead that we're talking about at 5 Mile Creek Pathway, and that can get a little bit confusing if I misspeak. Hopefully that orients you. Last time I was in front of you, I gave an update on crossing 10 Mile Road. And we reached out to ACHD just to have some early conversations about what that could look like. And then in the course of those very preliminary conversations, we started talking about the trailhead, which I alluded to last time. So ACHD is amenable, and we decided to take a closer look at what it could be. Again, just to orient you, this is the D2 stretch of 5 Mile Creek, so it's between Black Cat and 10 Mile Road. Oh, thanks. And it's so we're talking about, oh gosh. I'm just going to talk because I don't have enough familiarity with this.
What's that?
Checkbox. Okay, got it.
Sorry, I just checked it. Can you check it?
I can't check it. It's okay. Anyway, this is a site context. So we're in the vicinity of the wastewater treatment plant. There's a substation. The ACHD property is highlighted with a star. Rita Husky Park is just kind of down the pathway, and you can see the Bolano Creek subdivision. So in terms of timing of the ACHD project, we're looking at design this year, with right-of-way next year, and construction in 2021. So those plans are still evolving. They did have some drone footage of the corridor, which was kind of cool, which I've included here, and we will hope that it goes. Pull it up here. Oh. So here we're looking south. I think there are applications for the use of the city's drone and maybe some pathway reconnaissance or marketing.
So we're passing the trailhead section right now.
Yeah, so this property here is the, can you see the mouse when I move it?
Yep.
Is the ACHD parcel that we're talking about. And the 5 Mile Creek Pathway runs currently along the north side. And then there was the crossing issue that we talked about last time. So I don't think I will play the entire footage for you, but I think I can skip ahead. If you'll, somewhere at about 1:40, we come back on it from the other side. So now we're heading north, just, sorry.
South.
You're right, okay. There's the storage units that are near the wastewater treatment plant, and
there's the entrance to the wastewater treatment plant right there.
And then here's the project site right here, where we're talking about this potential for a trailhead.
That's cool.
So we looked at just a very rough concept to see what would fit there. I know Jay had done a bit of this in terms of just checking the parcel size, which is roughly outlined in green, is about 1.5 acres. We need to preserve maintenance access to this ACHD facility here and along the canal. And then we'd have a connection to the north. The idea is that we could possibly cost share with ACHD on some of these improvements, both to the trailhead and to get a crossing at the bridge that would be trail and pathway friendly in terms of width. So what would we do here? We could add water to fill water bottles or drinking fountains, a shade structure. There might be small benches for seating, stations for bike repair, some identity signage, some wayfinding. So just general trailhead amenities. There'd be some roadside landscape, and then parking for, if I accommodate for accessible parking, around 38 stalls total. So again, kind of rough, but there's definitely room here to add some trail-specific amenities. if we wanted. And so why are we looking at this in particular? I think there's an opportunity here to have some trail-specific amenities, but also to create identity for the pathway system. I knew it somewhat before I came on, and I'm getting to know it much better, as a user and as a planner and implementer. But I think if we had this kind of gateway on 10 Mile, as the road project goes in, there'd be something there to see. And I know you can see evidence of the pathway system as you drive through town, but unless you're really looking on maps or Google Earth, it tends to be a bit more invisible because it runs, we try to run it at least off of or sometimes entirely outside of the major roadways. So I think that's a cool opportunity in terms of, yes, this pathway is here, it's one of our priorities. It's relatively major and there's some distance you can travel. So also as the pathway system grows, I think there will be more and more a need for this. People who aren't within easy distance of it but want to drive and use a pathway that has some significance in terms of length, and otherwise they're parking in neighborhoods, and obviously they're not going to park on 10-mile roads. So I think it's an opportunity to start showing what these kinds of facilities can be. So mostly we're here tonight just to ask, what do you think? Is this a good idea, something we want to move forward with? And if so, then we would continue discussing in more detail how the cost share agreement with Ada County Highway District might work. Obviously, we'll have some elements of the bridge crossing with pedestrian facilities, but they've indicated that they're pretty cooperative and open to this idea, and so they'll need access, but it sounds like we'd be relatively free to take on the maintenance of it and develop it as a trailhead. And if as that evolves, and if the commission thinks it's a good idea, then we'll take it on to council as we get further along. So I would stand for questions or comments, if any of you have any on this particular update.
Molly, is that something we need to motion on? Or do we just need to discuss it?
Madam Chair, I guess I would ask Kim what she needs. I'm not sure that you do need a motion in order to give direction, but if that's something that
I was not
is
thinking
necessary
so
for
tonight.
staff.
Yeah, I think general direction.
Feedback.
Is this a good idea, a bad idea? I mean, partnering with ACHD, the cost share would include, we would reimburse them for the design, but they already have a consultant doing the road. We would reimburse them for the paving and the asphalt, or the curb and gutter, but they already have a contractor that's going to widen the road, so there's a real economy of scale there. So if this is a good idea, it's a great time to do it.
Cost sharing makes sense, in my opinion. I understand what that means. I was just making sure that we didn't need something specifically for you.
My understanding was that we were looking for some general consensus or comment as to whether to keep moving forward on this. It's fairly preliminary, but the cost share agreement, I think, would need to evolve fairly specifically by late spring, mid to late spring. So we'll just march on with your
Madam
general
President.
direction.
So where I'm at is, it could be a motion, doesn't have to be a motion. We're not far enough down the road to make any real decisions. But the feedback we crave from you right now is this a good idea or a bad idea? If this group thinks it's a bad idea, we're not going to take it the next step and go to council and say, council, does this resonate with you? Are you willing to let us go forward and develop some costs and take this the next step? And look into what it would take to enter into a cost share with ACHD on this. So if you think it's a good idea, I think our next step would be council for a same kind of preliminary discussion. If you think kill it now, I think we want to hear that too. So,
Madam President?
Just one second. I do think that you've done an amazing job working with ACHD. I know that's not always an easy task. So having a cost share agreement sounds like a good option, in my opinion. But I think
President?
To John, did you have something? Okay.
I did too, but.
Yep. I just heard John first, so I was trying to go in order.
I personally, I think it's a great idea. This is our main pathway through the city, and it's currently kind of the end of it. So having this in place and people able to use that pathway, I think is awesome.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes.
I agree. Also, I really think it's important to, I think it was called, a trailhead, basically because, I'm on this commission. I've heard about the pathways a lot, but I don't necessarily always see signs. I think that would be really great because I think education is a really important thing to get that out there so people know more about it. So I'm definitely in support of this as well.
Excellent.
Madam President?
Yes.
I mean, it's obvious we need a crossing there to get from, so I mean, I think that's a huge issue. Obviously, we need to work with ACHD to get that accomplished, so it's already kind of a partnership. And parking, trail, like Craig said, I mean, the end of the pathway, or maybe not 2/3 of it, to where it's going to go clear to the end of it, Black Cat, I think. I can't remember where the end of it is, but I think it's just a good situation where all the North Meridian's growing, and parking lots and hiking and pathways are a huge priority in our town. So it's a great idea.
And Madam President, I will say that ACHD has been very receptive. They seemed glad to hear from us. Our timing was kind of lucky. I may have mentioned this last time, but I think if we can integrate planning for the crossing and this trailhead and expansion of wastewater treatment and access to that as their project, as the ACHD project moves forward, the end result is only going to be stronger and better for everyone, not to mention more economically.
I would just hope that the crossing and all that stuff would get done at the same time.
It would. And ACHD, I was trying to limit this brief, I hope, conversation to the trailhead. But they did commit verbally in the initial meeting I went to a pedestrian crossing beacon at the 5 Mill Creek pathway, sort of wherever we decide that best works. So that's part of their preliminary planning.
Is that anything?
Yeah, Madam President, Kim, did they talk about a park and share going in right here?
That was before my time, yes. Mike, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Thanks. And so when we first talked about this maybe a year or so ago, the idea was possibly it would work as a park and ride. And we could just kind of partner and do trailhead / park and ride, because a lot of the pathway users are going to be on the weekend or in the evening, and that's when the commuters are not using the parking lot. We thought it'd be a great idea. It's not big enough for what they need.
Gotcha. No, I was just looking at from a synergy standpoint, it makes sense, but
yeah.
I'm with the others that have spoken. This is a home run for me. I think so. We need it. I'd like to see even more things added if we had the space, because it does need some identity right there. And as that wastewater treatment plant entrance gets expanded, it will down the road, and this road gets widened, a good spot right there for the community, whether you want to walk, ride a bike, or just enjoy the outdoors, that'd be good.
Madam President, I also agree. I think this is something sorely needed by the community. As multiple members have stated, it's hard to find the trailhead on occasion of where the pathway goes, so this is really key.
Yes. Sounds like everybody is happy with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, we do not have a workshop, so we are now on to staff reports.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. I'm kind of at the start of a new year in count my blessings mode. Just reflecting back, I think there's a lot to celebrate that I just want to mention briefly. Opening 2 new parks right near the end of the year, October, November. And then we talked about this at the beginning with the announcements, but we're on track to have ribbon cuttings for 4 projects this spring, and the groundbreaking, not necessarily a ceremony, but we're breaking ground on a 5th one. So again, those 4 are the Journey of Heroes Art, which this commission's been very involved in. the 5 Mile Creek Pathway, segment H2 near Fairview and Pine, which this commission's been very involved in, the Kleiner Memorial Plaza, which this commission's been very involved in, and Hillsdale Park, which this commission's been very involved in. So all of those, plus the kickoff of the first phase of South Meridian, I just want to take a moment and just be grateful for all the things that are happening, because this community is growing and our parks and recreation systems are growing with it. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I mean, like Steve said, I'd just echo some of that, as it's been so busy and so much fun. It's incredible.
Madam President?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and just call out a couple of things on the Recreation Division staff reports. I've mentioned it every single month for what feels like the past year or so, but our Rec One software is up and running. We are really the big story between now and the next meeting is that we will be eagerly anticipating the first day of shelter reservations on February 1st. At which point we will open up for the first time ever the ability to reserve picnic shelters and sports fields and tennis courts online off of our website. And so over the past month and a half or so since Rec One has gone live, we've been spending a lot of time working out kinks and working with finance department to make sure our daily reporting is going well. And there have been, highs and lows, and we've run into issues and tried to overcome them, and we've spent a lot of time on the phone with customer support and putting in enhancement requests. And so far, Rec One has really been great as far as customer service, and so we are actually really happy right now. Even though there are a lot of things pending that we would like to have added to the system, we're pretty happy with their customer service so far, and we just think that it was a really good switch over, and we're really excited for the online facility scheduling starting February 1st. And then a couple other things. This month is where everybody's kind of in planning mode for the summertime. We have sports leagues going on. We have our winter activity guide currently going that Jake talked about, but there's a lot of behind the scenes planning things taking place. With getting sponsorships ready for special events. We'll be working this month on getting some requests for proposals out for a lot of our park concessions opportunities. So the Kleiner Park concession stand, it completed its 3-year contract this last summer, and so it'll be available for a new 3-year contract. We're putting out requests for proposals for that one, and then some of our smaller opportunities are typically year by year, and so we'll have opportunities at Tully Park, Bear Creek Park, and Story Park this year for snow cone stands, as opposed to a building that the concessionaire occupies, like at Settlers and Kleiner. We allow vendors to bid on the opportunity to put a snow cone stand in our parks, and so we'll be doing that at 3 different parks this year. And so those will be out this month. And then we also, just this morning, MDC approved an agreement with the city for MDC to pay us $5,000 to help fund the farmers market. And so we will be turning that $5,000 around and putting an RFP out. Once that MDC agreement will go on to the council agenda for next week, and once council approves it, we'll be putting out an RFP to select a new farmers market coordinator. And so the coordinator from the last 2 years has retired, Becky Brashears, and so we'll be trying to find a new market coordinator and putting that $5,000 towards our contract with them. And there's a lot of, so there's some follow-up meetings still being had about when the market will take place, where it will take place. We're kind of shaking it up, putting everything out on the table about when and where and how it's going to take place. I think the one thing for sure, and I think I've mentioned it here, is that we're probably going to be dropping the youth component out of the name, at least, of the farmers market, still having a youth component to the event, but making it more of a Meridian Farmers Market, or a name that doesn't necessarily make it feel like it's a youth only event. So we'll be that RFP will be going out probably next week as soon as it's approved by council. So those are some of the exciting things coming up in the near future.
Somebody have any questions? Go really quiet.
Madam President,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I didn't even get there yet, but okay, meeting adjourned. I guess there are no questions for you, Colin. Thank you.
Kayla McNay seconds.
Oh, okay. Kayla seconds, sorry.
Oh, okay. Colin, I knew you wanted to get out of here too.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Sorry, that just really threw me off. I'm like, you went ahead of me, so next time let's wait for Joe to say adjourn.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.